Around the world, communities are having to work harder to access basic rights like food, water, safe housing, and a healthy environment. The Global Center on Adaptation spotlights these efforts through the Local Adaptation Champion Awards. We salute the leadership and innovation of local communities and invite decision makers to strengthen their hand by committing to the 8 principles of locally led adaptation and providing them the support that they need in ways that work for them. This year, we recognize champions working on water security, food security, urban adaptation solutions, and local entrepreneurship. Join us in felicitating the winners and read more about their work on the Global Hub on LLA.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining the Global Center on Adaptation, GCA, today in Baku. Our planet is on fire. We are knocking on the door of the Paris Agreement 1.5 degrees Celsius goal. The Paris Climate Change Agreement is under threat. What gives me hope? Locally led adaptation. Some of the very hardest hit communities who contributed least to the climate phenomenon with the limited resources and on the front lines. They are leading the way, even creating their own people's adaptation plans. Today's awardees show us the incredible potential of communities in action. These local champions and many more like them around the world need our strong support. They need finance to scale their work. The international community should not fail them, and we need global champions to help ensure it does not. That is why I'm so grateful for the leaders who have joined us today. Your support for this agenda can make difference. COP29 must strengthen adaptation finance and support the most vulnerable communities to take action where it matters most. Thank you.
Let me just check whether you hear me. And I think the answer is yes. Let me start with a key message from the field. Water, water everywhere, and not a drop to drink. These were the first words of Shomas Das. Shomas, you see on the screen on the left-hand side. She's an incredible local champion of adaptation. She lives in Chattogram, Bangladesh, a coastal city, as you know, Senior Advisor, where GCA is helping the local community to prepare, indeed, a people's adaptation plan. Shomas now has a plan. Shomas always had aspirations. Get her kids to school, put food on the table, fresh water flowing, lifting out of poverty. But none of that is possible, as also the Vice President of Tanzania reminded me earlier today, without resources. Bangladesh is the host of the Global Hub on Locally Led Adaptation, indeed. Bangladesh is the personification of revolutionized development. Bangladesh put economic resources into the hands of women just like Shomas all over Bangladesh. In fact, across the world. Bottom-up economic transformation. And what is our humble role as GCA, Global Center on Adaptation? We're the transmission belt. We're linking people's adaptation plans to international financial institutions, bringing funds at scale directly into communities just like in Chattogram, in Bangladesh, in South Asia, and in fact, in Africa, where we're scaling this approach across the continent with our flagship program in Africa called the Africa Adaptation acceleration program led and owned by the African continent itself. To date, the AAAP has shaped not 5 billion, not 10 billion, but $13 billion of development finance across 37 African nations. Local communities in the driver's seat. Now, and that's perhaps difficult to discuss, here at COP29, there is an elephant in the room, the US election. But you know what the common ground is, because there are no red states or blue states, there are risky states or resilient states. So will Bangladesh, will African nations, will small island states, will they be risky or will they be resilient and prosper? What is certain though, locally led adaptation is delivering. And I can tell you firsthand, not only from Chattogram, Bangladesh, not only in Asia, but also across the African continent. Last month, I had the privilege of being in Mukuru. Mukuru is an informal settlement in Nairobi. And GCA, with the support of Denmark, with the support of the United Kingdom, with the support of AFD, we're supporting local communities to turn waste into wealth and at the same time reduce flood risks. President Hilda Heine, it's thanks to you. You put in 2018, Madam President, the adaptation agenda on the global stage. I had the privilege also to visit Marshall Islands a few years ago, where you showed that the people in Marshall Islands, they're building their own seawalls to keep out the rising tides. What is for sure though, colleagues, is that around the globe, whatever happens in Baku, communities are taking bold action. Their stories are powerful and inspiring, which is why today we celebrate the final 4 winners of the 2024 Local Adaptation Champion Awards, and we'll come back to that in a minute. So, Your Excellencies, on this side, the leaders on this side of the table, it is time to turbocharge. It's time to turbocharge our response bottom up. It is high time that adaptation finance fully supports local adaptation. In the report we launched today, I hope I have the report here. This is the report we're launching as we speak. There are stories of resilience where we see how and demonstrate how communities are transforming risky environments into resilient economies. In 2021, the international community, under the leadership of the United Kingdom government, the international community agreed to doubling adaptation finance, and the Director General of the World Trade Organization was instrumental already in 2021 by linking adaptation and trade as a central element of the Paris Agreement implementation. But in fact, here in Baku, we need to double down. We need to land the trajectory to the $40 billion a year. And we shouldn't stop there. This Baku COP, as the foreign minister from Tanzania will tell me, this is the finance COP. But what is climate finance without adaptation front and center? And my answer to the foreign minister is nothing. We can do it, but we have to keep scaling up. And again, I want to thank foremost the United Kingdom with the vision, the determination across the parties, across different governments to financially support the locally led adaptation program. I want to personally thank you, Jenny Bates. From what Jenny and I have in common is the focus on impacts, on results, on accountability to the local community on the ground. And I also want to thank our other development partners, Norway, France, Rémy, Rioux. You have been with us from the beginning. You hosted the first board meeting of the GCA in Paris years ago. Denmark, Ole, Mangtak, the Netherlands, Canada, the Gates Foundation. Not sure whether Neil is here with us. The Gates Foundation has been with us from the beginning as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, President Hilda Heine, Mr. Vice President, DG, ministers, DGs, colleagues, allow me to come back to Shomas from Chattogram. Water, water everywhere, and not a drop to drink. But Shomas showed us the way to transform her community. Let us turn the tides, climate-proof our economies, bottom up, so that Shomas and the millions of individuals just like her not only survive but thrive, leading from the front lines. Thank you very much indeed, and it's my distinct honor now to welcome first Jenny Bates, the principal agent of the United Kingdom, the only country from the G7 who was here with her leader. Jenny, the floor is yours. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Patrick, and it is indeed great to be here. And I would like to thank the Global Centre on Adaptation for the invitation to the UK to be part of this work, but also to be involved in the awards that we're going to talk about in a moment. I wanted to start by expressing apologies from my Minister Annelies Dodds, who very much wanted to be here today but has not yet arrived at COP, but will be here this evening and into tomorrow. She was delighted and deeply inspired to read the nominations and the winners for these awards. Our new government in the UK, our new Foreign Secretary and our new Minister for Development, who came into office earlier this year, as Patrick says, very much continue the long tradition in the UK of a focus on locally led development. They are emphasising a very strong focus on partnership and on how we continue that genuine engagement with partners at the local level, and will, I think, very much continue that tradition. As Patrick has said, as the official in the system, I'm very focused also on evidence and impact. And we know from the evidence that local communities being at the centre of decision making to climate impacts is both the right thing to do and drives better outcomes in terms of the results. And this is something that the UK will be continuing to focus on. As Patrick has mentioned, the UK was one of the first countries to endorse the principles for locally led adaptation, and we are funding the Least Developed Countries Initiative for Effective Adaptation and Resilience to put those principles into action. We also partner very strongly with GCA's Global Hub on locally led adaptation, which is really about the best practice and learning and sharing that across all partners. We're really proud to be involved in the work that the GCA has been doing, and we're really looking forward to the learning that can be shared through the release of this report today. I think it's really powerful, as I was mentioning before we started the panel, to have real examples of real people doing real things in the real world, which is just so important. What we know, we can't stop here with the success and the great examples that we're going to talk about later with the awards. We know we need to do more, and that more climate interventions need to be designed and delivered by local people and local organisations, including women and girls and Indigenous people. And in the UK, we're committing to continuing to increase our focus on adaptation, to partner further on locally led interventions. And I would just like again to say how pleased we are with the work that's happened to date express our support for the winners that we're going to hear about shortly, and encourage everybody, I think, to read the report. Thank you very much, Patrick.
Fantastic, Director General Jenny Bates, for your very bold statement indeed. All protocol being observed. We have a president with us, we have a vice president with us, we have 4 winners with us. I just would like to give the floor briefly from the Global South, in fact from Bangladesh, as the co-convener of this event, to make brief opening statements on behalf of Chief Advisor, Interim Advisor, Mr. Yunus. Please, sir.
Hello, hello. Is the microphone on?
Yes.
Thank you, and welcome to the biggest disappointment of the week. People expecting Professor Mohamed Yunus and having me here. When I took on this role a couple of months ago, my son looked up who Professor Yunus is and how people talk about him and said, "Dad, is he Jesus?" I can't do Jesus, so I've adapted the script a little so that it's a bit more comfortable in my own voice. So, ladies and gentlemen, adaptation. When people talk about net zero for 2050 or average temperatures, what's sometimes hidden behind that is that climate change is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. And countries like Bangladesh, huge population, we're the 8th largest country in the world and also amongst the most vulnerable. It's existential for us. So adaptation is not a luxury, it's not an option, it's very much a necessity for us. Bangladesh's experience speaks volumes. Low-income communities are often hit the hardest when it comes to cyclones and flooding. Extreme events disrupt lives, not just in the event, but also jeopardize healthcare, market access, and education for long after. But adoption really needs to find its pride of place alongside mitigation in the global agenda. And for adaptation to be transformative, it must be locally informed and locally driven. Communities know their landscapes and their ecosystems best. They're not passive sufferers or beneficiaries, they're active agents of change, and our task is to empower them to lead in decision making. In Bangladesh, locally led adaptation, as we've just seen an example of, is a core pillar of our national policy. We have mobilized domestic resources for local adaptation efforts. Internationally, climate diplomacy, adaptation is a priority pillar for us. And we thank the Global Center on Adaptation South Asia office in Dhaka for everything that you do. When it comes to climate finance, it's important to realize that climate finance is not charity. It's basically payments for a balance of payments deficit from those who have lived beyond planetary boundaries to those who are suffering the consequences. But we need new forms of adaptation, not just tinkering on the sidelines or building walls here and there. We need adaptation in lifestyle, in consumption patterns, and in production models, make them more circular and more sustainable. And as my boss likes to say, we must create a new civilization, a civilization that's grounded in compassion and empathy towards the need of people, our planet, and well-being of everyone, including future generations. We need to strengthen coalitions among vulnerable countries and truly harness the power and energy of youth across the global south and perhaps beyond to unite in that cause. Lastly, just want to highlight that adaptation is not just a risk response. It can provide positive possibilities for new opportunities and new pathways to sustainable development. So we are looking at it very much positively as we embrace transformational adaptation. So let me end over here by congratulating the winners of today's awards. Personally apologize on behalf of Professor Mohamed Yunus, who couldn't be here, but thank you very much for your time and for listening to me.
Well, thank you so much, Special Envoy. You might not be Jesus, but your words are very well taken here in this room indeed. So let's shift gear a little bit, because we want to move now to the keynote address of President Heine and of the Vice President of Tanzania. But before we do so, we want to hear first briefly from Anju to present the awards to the award winners in the presence of the President and the Vice President, and after which we will turn to Okonjo, our big sister, who will then also make framing remarks in response to these awards. Anju, please.
Thank you, Patrick. Excellencies, dear guests, thank you for joining us today to celebrate the winners of our Local Adaptation Champions Awards. We've been doing this now for 2 years. This is our 3rd year. And it seems that every year we double the number of applications. We started with about 250 applications. The next year we had almost 500. This year we have almost 900. So it's just an idea of the amount of work that's going on at the local level to deal with adaptation. So competition was really tight, which I think makes it almost all the more reason to celebrate the wins. The time now to announce the winners. We have first the food security category, and the winner is, I'll try to do this in the way that they do it in Oscars, so and the winner is Triaid Burkina Faso. So we have with us Ava Kienrebogo Convolo. Sorry if I don't pronounce it right. She's a farmer and president of the women's cooperative Legume Tab Lapanga, which means being together is a force. Yeah. The next category is local entrepreneurship. The winner in this category is Aliet Green. We have here the founder and director of Aliet Green, Lastiana Yuliandri Utami. And she set up a social enterprise in Yogyakarta, Indonesia, which pioneers solutions in regenerative organic agriculture to enhance the well-being of indigenous communities and to support the agroforestry initiatives of small family holdings, women and people with disabilities. So Lastiana's organization has done amazing work in the reuse water management systems and the introduction of dwarf coconut trees that are easier for women to harvest. In the third category, we have urban adaptation solutions. And the winner is Instituto Internacional de Medio Ambiente y Desarrollo. Sorry, I massacred that, I'm sure, but congratulations to IIED from Buenos Aires. IIED has been working with the community in Barrio 20, which is an informal settlement outside of the capital city of Buenos Aires. And they basically have an urban lab, which is a participatory platform where residents, social organizations, and government agencies come together to co-design climate interventions. And these include tree planting, green walls, and shaded communal spaces. In the fourth category, we have water security. And the winner is Green Hope Foundation, Kiribati. So, unfortunately, we couldn't have a winner from Kiribati join us because they didn't have passports. Nobody in the community had passports. So we have with us Tien Le, who is from the Green Hope Foundation Vietnam chapter. And the work they've done is actually quite amazing. It's using solar technology to distill saline water and make fresh water available to deal with the problem of salinity. Congratulations to the winners.
So thank you, Anju. Also, just to present Anju, Anju is also a global champion herself in driving this locally led adaptation agenda, not just in Bangladesh, but across the globe. So thank you very much, Anju, indeed. Now we're building to this crescendo moment where the leaders here on stage also make additional framing and keynote remarks. And I would like to invite President Hilda Heine to come to the podium if you would like to, Your Excellency, to make your comments. After which we have the Vice President and DG of WTO.
Let's give an, oops, is this out? It's on? Can you hear me? Okay. All right, let's give another round of applause to the winners, please. Good afternoon, Yahweh, Excellencies, friends, and colleagues. Let me first start by thanking the Global Center on Adaptation and the Resilience Hub for organizing and hosting this leaders event to put the spotlight on locally led adaptation. We're also here to celebrate what individual communities can achieve under their own initiative with the GCA's LLA Awards. I'm happy to learn that this includes one group from the Marshall Islands' own region of North Pacific, which is from the Kiribati. Sorry, the representative isn't here, but thank you for taking the award. I recently joined the board of the GCA because adaptation has become the #1 priority for my country. As an atoll nation, the fate of the Marshall Islands will be decided by the global response to the climate crisis. With our entire national territory of over 1,000 islands, just 2 meters or 6 to 7 feet above sea level, not delivering on the Paris Agreement, specifically the 1.5 degrees target, amounts to a death sentence for us. The damage of climate change has been real for many years already, and it is constantly getting worse, where the flooding of land, towns, and critical infrastructures like airports has become the norm. When it is not salt water contaminating our freshwater aquifers, it will be extremely drought that ruins our water supplies. These impacts and many others are happening all at the same time. It's causing people to migrate from our islands to our main centers and also make it difficult to make a livelihood. Our key centers, however, don't have the jobs to sustain the influx as they also flood and have their own climate problems. So people increasingly move overseas too, resulting in a population drain that doesn't help us either. None of this is sustainable. COP29 must prioritize adaptation finance to protect those of us on the front lines that didn't cause the climate crisis. We not only need adaptation front and center in any NCQG new finance target, we also need a quantum leap in ambition on adaptation finance too. We all know there is a massive shortfall of funding for adaptation. Just protecting the RMIs, or Marshall Islands, 2 urban centers from half a meter of sea level rise is estimated to cost about $9 billion US. Marshall Island doesn't have these kind of resources, so without global support on adaptation, our time is running out. We hear about a lot of very high budget adaptation projects involving major international agencies. But when I visit my own constituency, for example, I don't see any impact of all of these projects on people's actual lives. Locally led adaptation may look different everywhere, but it means the same thing everywhere. If the communities are involved, if they are benefiting, that is the only real mark of success. If we don't directly help frontline communities, adaptation has failed. So every adaptation finance mechanism needs to find a way to benefit vulnerable communities directly. We need to streamline international funding so that it reaches communities on the front line faster and more abundantly. And we need to make special efforts to empower communities, not only to take action, but also to be involved in designing actions. When we developed the Marshall Islands National Adaptation Plan, we call it our survival plan, we held extensive consultation with communities to make sure they understand and contributed to its design. Looking at those LLA projects that are being celebrated here today, we can see just how much potential there is with local action. I would like to congratulate today's laureates of the Local Adaptation Champion Awards for what they have achieved in their communities. Your work is a powerful reminder that real lasting change begins at the grassroots, where communities drive the solutions. I hope that these awards will inspire the international community with confidence to prioritize support for adaptation and specifically support for locally led adaptation. With the GCA, we are also hoping to launch a new adaptation financing program for small island developing states, which I hope the international community will fully support. I encourage the GCA continues to spotlight locally led adaptation, and I look forward to continuing to work with the GCA to champion the adaptation and adaptation finance agenda. Our lives and the future of our nation depends on it. Thank you very much. Komoltada.
Thank you so much, Madam President, for your very bold statement, also indicating the importance of the emerging SITS adaptation program. And as Jenny Bates indicated in her framing remarks, it has to be underpinned by evidence. That's also why we as GCA will launch in January the State on Trends on Adaptation report, specifically dedicated on the debts on the SITS. And we're glad also here to have Dr. Edde Ilyas with us, the director of the SITS SDA. So what is interesting and not remarkable or surprising that all the winners today are women. It's also not surprising that the president of Hilda, who just spoke, is a leader from the front line. It's not surprising that the head of WTO is also a woman and very bold leader. We also have a bold leader, physically not present here, but spiritually she is the president of Tanzania. Is also a very strong leader on locally led adaptation and on climate action written large. We have here with us the Vice President of Tanzania, a very dynamic go-getter to drive climate adaptation for the people across the continent. Mr. Vice President, you have the floor, sir.
Well, Excellencies, I'm honored to be here representing Her Excellency Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan, the President of the United Republic of Tanzania, who is a board member and a very strong supporter of the mission of the Global Center on Adaptation. And today we are here to recognize the extraordinary work of local people who have been selected in recognition of their exemplary adaptation actions. Indeed, local people know best when it comes to solving their climate problems, because it is local communities who suffer the most, and we as leaders must empower these local champions. And we must do so because local people are very innovative. They are very resilient. And I can tell you that out of these, women stand out. Excellencies, let me also emphasize that while we commend the Global Center on Adaptation for this initiative, we suggest that they consider expanding it to cover other categories, and in particular the blue economy related activities that support the livelihood of women. And I'll just give an example from my own country, Tanzania, where we have women in Zanzibar doing seaweed farming, and they are organized in groups to do this particular activity because their former rice farms were invaded by rising seawater, and therefore they decided that they should move on and do seaweeding instead. And the farms that are invaded by seawater, they are also in turn used for fish farming. But the main challenge that they face is obviously limited funding to be able to expand the seaweed. But not only that, unfortunately, most of our women don't swim. So we need funding for them to buy boats so that they can go deeper into the ocean to extend the seaweed farming. So it is an honor to join in this event of giving felicitations to this year's winners of the Local Adaptation Champions Award. I'm delighted that President Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan herself sat on the jury to select the winners with great interest and admiration. And by standing up for the local people, by properly empowering them to act on their own terms, that is how we can truly be global champions for locally led adaptation. And as we stand here at COP29, with many of us participating in the negotiations over the new climate finance goal, we must stand firm in support of climate finance reaching the local communities, and for international adaptation finance to be effective, it must reach and empower the most vulnerable communities in climate-threatened regions. I would like to end again by congratulating this year's winners of the award and encourage other communities to come up with inspiring adaptation initiatives in the forthcoming global championships for locally led adaptation. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Honourable Vice President, for your very bold statement, also making suggestions on broadening the categorization of the award winners for next year. And I think that's also a testimony for the growing and emergence of the adaptation agenda, that we do include the blue economy as well. Given that we have half of the GCA board members here on the stage, I suspect that that suggestion is already here endorsed by acclamation, indeed. Another speaker now is actually quite extraordinary. From being a finance minister to a managing director at the World Bank, now heading the World Trade Organization, people-centered development has always been central to her mission. I would like now to ask the floor and give the floor to Madame Okonjo-Iweala to explain to us how the multilateral system, which is on the threat, how trade supports local communities.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick, and good afternoon, everyone. And I'm really thrilled to see the prize winners and see the young women in front of us. Go for it, women. I know men can do it too, but it's really amazing, you know, so I'm not trying to be partial. But there are two remarks I want to make from the trade perspective with respect to adaptation. The first is can you hear me? What we are noticing from the trade side, and we've given it a name, and perhaps some of the things we're seeing about how people in communities are adapting speak to this. We are noticing that climate change is changing the way countries specialize. It's changing the comparative advantages of countries. You know, so there are countries that used to, we say in economics that the best thing is to specialize in what you're good at. And you produce it and you sell it to others who are not good at that thing. And that's how trade happens, and you have your comparative advantage. But climate change is changing that comparative advantage. We are seeing in several ways that maybe countries, due to the drought conditions, due to water conditions, may be developing different comparative advantages. So we have something that we think many developing countries now have, what we call a green comparative advantage. So you should specialize in what you're environmentally good at or green at. And if we look at it, we find that Africa has 60% of the world's solar resources, more than 60%, but it only gets less than 2 to 3% of the world's investment in renewables. But we have a green comparative advantage. So we want to point this out. We should specialize in producing the green renewable energy, and investment should recognize that. We also have critical minerals, don't we? So we can transform those critical minerals in place using clean energy and its green comparative advantage. Water, we are discovering through new science that there's also hydrological comparative advantage. the world, the climate change is changing the way water is distributed, isn't it? And that means that sometimes places that used to be water, that could produce water intensive crops, can no longer, because they don't have that water. And others that didn't have, we are discovering new atmospheric rivers. That's what they are called. New water resources, new groundwater resources, which means that they can have a hydrological comparative advantage. They can, in their communities, benefit from that once the science gets out and this is known. So this means that you can have what we call virtual water trade. Those who have the water comparative advantage can now produce water intensive crops they never used to be able to, and trade them to others. So this may sound strange to you, but please watch out, because this climate change is changing the way that we trade, the way that we produce, the way that we should look at our supply and value chains. And the WTO is arguing that we should look at communities to see what their new comparative advantages are and adapt to it. And that's why I'm very thrilled by this community-based approach. We have to reimagine trade to include the new green and other hydrological comparative advantage we're saying. So that's one point I wanted to raise here. I've been the co-chair of a water commission that has looked into these issues, and we see the way patterns are shifting, and we have to value water properly to make it work. The second point I want to make is on financing. Okay, financing adaptation is falling far short of what it needs. But we need to look innovatively to see how, if you are going to continue to reward people who are doing the right things, make sure that countries adapt. We need to find it. This is the passion you have, Patrick, and what you're driving. So what are the mechanisms? We think, and not everyone may do, that one of the tools we need is carbon pricing. Okay? Carbon pricing is going to enable us to drive people to decarbonize their economic activity, whether it's at the firm level, at the country level, and at the same time, as a former finance minister, raise additional resources that we can use to finance those who are trying to transit, who are going through the transition but don't have the money to finance it, which is many of our countries in Africa. So don't think about this carbon pricing. At the WTO, we are working with the IMF, the World Bank, the OECD, UNCTAD, and UNFCCC to create a global approach to carbon pricing that can benefit us in our countries, helping us decarbonize, whilst at the same time saying to the richer countries, look, whatever money you get from this, you should direct it to help us transition. So hopefully, Patrick, this may be another source of financing globally. We should really push that to make your work easier, and at the local level, help us see what communities are doing. And congratulations.
Thank you so much, Director General, for your bold statements, as always. And the importance of trade to build resilient economies is, of course, very compelling indeed. And at the end of the day, it is financing for development. And the person who also today epitomizes that is President and CEO of AFD, Rémy Rioux. Please, floor is yours, sir.
Invitation on behalf of France and as the head of AFD, I really want to commend the GCA's contribution and your commitment, Patrick, behind this so important initiative to raise awareness on adaptation. And our laureates today, champions, will help us tremendously in this regard. And also to remind us with locally led solutions, to remind us, what development experts know, that in the end, and that climate experts should know or will know, that in the end it's all about empowering people, especially youth and women, to take control of their own destiny. I mean, we should not oppose development and climate. In the end, we should create jobs, create opportunities, so that next generation will take care of climate. Next generation will invent the solutions that we don't know for now and deploy them at the required scale based on territorial needs. AFD is very proud to be a member partner of GCA. We were the first financial institution to sign the LLA principles. We are now factoring in all our work, the LLA principles, including in the discussion we have with the countries themselves. So we have a program called Adaptation. It's active, for instance, in Ivory Coast, Comoros, Guinea, Ghana, now Bangladesh, Palestine, Jordan, and it's really about accompanying the countries to build local plans, allocate budgets, up to project preparations in the end. And with the help of GCA, with this kind of dialogue with the countries, we were able to multiply by 5 our adaptation finance since COP29. So it's not enough, but it's already 3 billion euro investments a year out of 77.5 of climate finance. So it's 40%, and we certainly want to do way more. And last point, Patrick, I really want to commit today to engage in a community of practices about LLA and help you disseminate these best practices at the level of the community of all public development banks. So this is this initiative called Finance in Common. We launched 4 years ago. We will reconvene in Cape Town in Africa, maybe talk about the AAAP there. With the G20 presidency, African presidency next year, the South African government. So we will convene in same date, same location as the first meeting of the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors, so that the solution, this awareness, this attention are really at the heart of climate finance, at the heart of development finance from Baku to the next steps in 2025. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Rémy, and again for being with us from the beginning, also as the first GCA board member, in fact, and for your very generous offer of deepening our partnership on LLA specifically with the public development banks. And indeed, South Africa is the place to go. So I think also that's the next destination for you, Anju, in your early next year on your work program. Before we come to Denmark, because it's also about financing, indeed, I want to go back to the African continent. We have a minister here with us, and I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but I think it's Minister Khadija from Somalia. Please, just share your perspective on what is needed to scale LLA action and make sure that it reaches those frontier communities indeed. And thank you so much, DG from WTO.
Thank you. My name is Khadija, and the Minister for Environment and Climate Change for Somalia. Thank you for this opportunity, and I want to say congratulations for the ladies. It's really inspiring us, and I just want to have a few remarks. Regarding Somalia, I wanted to give brief. The Minister for Environment and Climate Change in Somalia is almost 2 years and 3 months old, and for civil issues, but I want to just give brief remarks regarding Somalia. In Somalia, is harsh reality of climate change.
I think you should change.
In Somalia, the harsh reality of climate change. Not working? Okay. In Somalia, it's constant drought.
There is something very interesting. The further you are there, we don't hear you. So if you can sit there, we will descend the stage.
Hello.
Sorry. In Somalia, the harsh reality of the climate change. So, drought and devastating floods. Testing the reality and resilience of our people.
You know how embarrassed I am to interrupt you again because we can't hear you. And you know why? Why don't you just stand here?
It will be better.
Please.
I'm really sorry. And you can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. In Somalia, the harsh reality of the climate change shows itself through the constant droughts and devastating floods, constantly testing the resilience of our people. Empowering our local communities is not just a policy choice, it is essential for survival. It is ensure our adaptation strategies are deeply rooted in the reality of Somalia life, reflecting the wisdom and needs of those who live with the consequences of those environmental changes every day. Our expose to climate change highlight the urgent need for financial mechanisms that reach the heart of our communities. Such a funding is not just supportive, it is a pillar for starting timely and climate action that can transform lives and landscape at the grassroots level. In Somalia, strengthening local governance is more than an administrative function. It is about creating the fabric of community trust and cooperation. By involving local leaders and stakeholders in our decision-making process, we do more than plan effective strategic. We build collective vision for resilient future. I'll make it short. Our commitment is not only addressing the immediate threats, but also prepared for future challenges, ensuring that our resilience growth is stronger with each passing day. Cooperation is not just helpful. Enhancing global cooperation is not just helpful, it's crucial by balancing the scale of the climate justice. As we face our size effect of the climate change, we want to craft sustainable model of growth and resilience that not only serve our nation, but also offer vulnerability in the start of a strategic and other region facing similar. I thank you for this opportunity, for sharing these thoughts, and we look forward to fruitful discussion. And I thank you as well for inviting us here, and I thank all the audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Madam Minister, for also prioritizing climate adaptation across government in Somalia and abroad. So finance is the rule of the game. That's why it's also fantastic that we have the Undersecretary here with us from Denmark. I think all of you have been with us also from the beginning. You're one of our largest shareholders in Africa. You work across the continent with us. What are your perspectives? Perhaps you want to speak from here. My working assumption is that microphone doesn't work.
Thank you so much, Patrick, and also thanks a lot for inviting us to this amazing event. And I've been seeing, I think this is one of the best or most well-attended events that I've been to, and I'm unsure if it's because you have been able to really attract inspiring people that everybody wants to listen to, or the new young leaders, women leaders, or is because the issue of adaptation, everybody realizes that it is increasingly important to everybody. I mean, looking at the reports we give every year when we go to the COP, it's more and more depressing in terms of what we are confronted with. And therefore, we need to go from a mitigation mode into an adaptation mode. And while we have been really, somewhat successful on mitigation, and we've also been attracting more finance for mitigation than adaptation, that needs to change. For me, I've always thought about mitigation. It's a global issue. It cuts across borders. We need to solve that with global solutions. But adaptation, it's localized. We need to solve adaptation with local solutions. So that's, in my head, the big difference between the two. For Denmark, we are really committed to do more on adaptation. We have reserved 30% of our development budget for climate change as such, but out of that, 60% we have reserved for only adaptation, because we know the need will be there in the future. Furthermore, we are looking for more innovative solutions, guarantee schemes, attracting private finance into adaptation wherever possible. We need to do everything we can on this agenda. And on the locally led, I mean, we are fully committed. We are supporting projects locally led everywhere we can. We see they make better results. Communities, they have the solutions. They are extremely innovative, and they know exactly how to use the money the best way possible as such. And we do that in all the countries we work. We recently actually started a program with Somalia also on this issue. Finally, I really want to thank GCA and you, Patrick, I mean, for making sure that this agenda is kept on the top level, because we need to do more of this, and we need the solutions that work broadened out, and we need everybody to be more aware that we need to invest more in adaptation in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Under Secretary, also for reconfirming your commitment to doubling, not even perhaps even tripling down on adaptation finance. And I think I also speak on behalf of the Vice President of Tanzania, that Tanzania and other countries in Africa, they're ready for business to do private sector finance, to work with guarantee systems. So your development finance will be very well spent in countries such as Tanzania, indeed. I know it's 5:30, actually it's overtime. It's like the climate crisis, we're running in overtime. But we still have two speakers, and the challenge for those two closing speakers is to present their bold idea in a very crisp way. So I first would like to give the floor, please come here, sir, for the Adaptation Fund. What is your big contribution to locally led adaptation from the Adaptation Fund? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the invitation. It's a privilege and an honor being representing the Adaptation Fund Board here. I'm the chair, a serving chair for this year for the Adaptation Fund. I'm Lucas from Argentina. Since the beginning of the work of the Adaptation Fund Board, we have been working directly connected with the local actors, as we are here to celebrate our champions for the locally led adaptation initiatives, and we are very, very happy to be supporting the activities that are taking place. The Adaptation Fund, through its direct access and the new adopted locally led adaptation model and finances window, is enabling countries and communities to directly access resources they need, empowering them to design and implement adaptation solutions to reflect their unique environments, traditions, and priorities. Through the Adaptation Fund Climate Innovative Accelerator, for example, we have seen how small grants nurture diverse voices and create safe spaces for experimentation and creative problem solving, with the confidence that these communities have the agency and the insight to shape their own climate resilience future. We are now looking forward to expanding our support to locally led adaptation even further, with the board inviting additional implementing entities such as the Caribbean Development Bank, the CAF, UNIDO, and UNDP to present proposals for regional and global small grant aggregator programs for locally led adaptation. The fund has the pleasure for contributing to the awards in 2023, and we are happy to do it again. As part of this prize, this year winners, like the last one, will be invited to fund readiness event to share their expertise and experience with our national implementing entities. These initiatives that we are celebrating demonstrate innovative approach to urgent climate issues, developing sustainable water management practice, promoting climate resilience agriculture, empowering small businesses with adaptive capacities, and reimagining urban spaces withstanding environmental stresses. On behalf of the Adaptation Fund, I want to commend each nominee and winner for their courage, commitment, and ingenuity. Your work is not just adapting to climate change, it's transforming the way the world thinks about climate resilience. Together, through the power of local leadership, we can build a more sustainable, inclusive, and resilient future for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lucas, for your strong words. It also is a demonstration that there is strong complementarity between the Adaptation Fund and the Global Hub on Locally Led Adaptation. We as GCA are, as I said before, the transmission belt of adaptation expertise, people's adaptation plans into large-scale funding of the IFIs. That is the niche which we aim to occupy. We're coming to a close of this event. People are getting nervous, looking at their clocks, need to run to other events, totally understood. But we don't want to conclude this by acknowledging that climate impacts are not only in Africa, but they are severe, not only in SIDS, but they are severe, but also obviously in Latin America. That's why we're delighted to have the Vice Minister of Argentina making a short closing statement and close this meeting.
Okay, thank you very much, and let me start by saying thank you and to celebrating, of course, all the nominees and the initiatives. But in particular, of course, I would like to celebrate all the initiative made by the International Institute for Environment and Development that is in Argentina. Let me just say a few words from a city perspective. I am representing the city of Rosario, so I think that was the missing piece. So I'm very happy to really have the opportunity, and thank you to Patrick and the GCA, of course, for the catalyst approach to adaptation that they have from the very beginning, and also for having us with these final remarks. So from that perspective, let me tell you how important it is to have these transformative projects in urban context and focusing in particular in the most vulnerable. This project is focused on Barrio 20 in the city of Buenos Aires. It's not our city, but I'm here because we are also the next stage of this project. And the next stage of this project is in our city, in Barrio Moreno, where people is and in particular the most vulnerable are more affected with heat waves. So to really monitor these heat waves, the impact in their health, and also to act, because we need to really accelerate together the implementation of adaptation action. And this very specific and small project is about that, transforming people's life. And that is the role of the cities, because we are at the front line. We are at the front line for the negative impacts, but also for the solutions. So again, congratulations, everybody. Let me tell you how important it is to have Argentina also today in the context that we are experiencing. So thank you for having us. Congratulations to everybody and to the GCA for the approach. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Vice Minister, which brings... It's typical Oscar. The podium breaks down when you come to a conclusion. It is also perhaps testimony that the adaptation agenda is not over. So we shouldn't be pessimistic. We certainly shouldn't be optimistic that we're already there, but we should be very determined in moving forward on this journey on adaptation finance. We've heard, not yet, from the winners themselves. Today, we will have a reception with the winners literally right after, next door, technically. Anju will tell. But we also learned and listened to the leaders here on stage. We said, well, finance, 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 but also equally important, results, results, results. I think that is the agenda in front of us. I thank you very much for joining today. I wish you a very productive continuation of the Baku Climate Summit. And do not forget, when the new collective quantifiable goal is being discussed, don't forget to increase the importance of adaptation. when you talk to your colleagues about where are we on a doubling adaptation finance, it has to be delivered, comes 2025. We as GCA, with our shareholders here on stage, we're here, hopefully, as your partner of choice. Thank you very much indeed.